Welcome back to the Bold Calls Fantasy Football Show. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. We got Alan Seslowsky of the Rotowire Fantasy Football Show. Alan and I are going to talk today about what's going on in all the NFL training camps, battles and position battles that we need to keep close attention to. It's going to be a good one. Let's go. Welcome back to the program, Mr. Alan Seslowsky. Brother, how you doing?
That's a fancy intro video you have there. You've really upped the podcast game here with the fancy intro.
You know, over here at DFS Army, we decided that once you got the hell out of the program, like we got to class this thing up a little bit. So yeah, and there's a few pretty cool ones. But man, so for those of you who are longtime listeners and subscribers to the DFS Army products, you know Alan Seslowsky, aka Season Long Says, very, very well. Al, you've had quite the journey in, frankly, a very short period of time. You were doing work over here at DFS Army. You and I were doing a show together. You did a little bit of work with Roster Watch, and now you found your way over to Rotowire. So for those of you who are just catching up, why don't you let the people know just what are you doing over at Rotowire, how are you enjoying it, and what have you learned so far?
Yeah, man, no, you guys have done a great job keeping Bold Call podcast alive. I obviously enjoy interacting with you and listening to the podcast. It's appointment listening for me. Yeah, as you said, you know, I'd always started off like working in the chat rooms, the Discord of DFS Army. I love interacting with people and certainly did the same thing over at Roster Watch. Loved writing articles, and now I'm just doing the video content grind, putting out my fantasy takes, trying to do some video and YouTube work. And like I said, just always trying to stay out there and talk about fantasy football, because at the end of the day, you have to do what you love. And you and I both love this game, the content game, the fantasy football game. And now we're in August, so I want to help some people win their leagues, take some of our advice, take some of our strategy. But again, make your own decisions. That's what we always say. We'll hash out the takes. We'll hash out what we think is going to happen. But ultimately, everyone needs to decide what they're going to do with their own fantasy teams.
It's just, how do you take the information and make the best decision? That's all we're trying to get you to do here. For those of you who aren't following Al, most of you probably are, but go check him out on Twitter at Alan Seslowsky. My favorite place to follow you, Al, because frankly, I'm going to just say it. I'm going to drop this on you. I think you're an innovator. I'm going to say it because one of the things that's really underutilized in this space, period, is just a video game, right? I mean, you see there's TikTok videos out there that are entertaining and stuff, but yours are both entertaining, visually impressive. And now that I've been dabbling in the video game for the last year and a half or so, I just have a new appreciation for the level of detail, and just every video you do gets better and better. So if you want good content, you want to be entertained, go follow Al on TikTok. I mean, listen, this is where the world is going. We're going to that under 60 seconds. Give me the information quickly. So go do it now. Well,
here it is. Here's the way to do it. Vertical video, like, you know, most people watch video on their phone. So vertical, and I can have this discussion all day. So you just stop me when you want to get into some fantasy football.
I guarantee you right now, Kevin is just like cringing. Like, let's get to the content.
No, people consume content in different ways. I think anyone that most people look on their phone. We're in the thumb scrolling, world that we live in now. And I think that the whole idea behind vertical video content is to get people to be interested in what you're saying, but then also drive them to longer form content on YouTube. So that's how you introduce a new audience to what you're doing. And if they connect with that, if you're giving value to them in short form, they're going to want to see what's going on in your long form content. So thank you for saying all that. And I just think that's where the world is right now. It's in short form vertical video.
Yeah. And also, I forgot to mention, for those of you who have SiriusXM subscriptions, Al, you're going once a week?
Every Sunday, we're on SiriusXM channel 87, the Fantasy Sports Channel, 1 to 3 p.m. for the entire offseason. I do that show with Jim Coventry. And yeah, man, every Sunday we do some good stuff over there.
It's good content. Appreciate it. So we've talked enough. I don't want to bury the lead. We got to talk about your beloved New York Jets, okay? Because on my timeline, constantly is getting blown up by Elijah Moore highlight videos. We saw one today. We're recording this on August 2nd. The one-hander. Of course, it was from Joe Flacco. Is what it is.
It's crazy, right?
So we got Elijah Moore. We got the rookie Garrett Wilson, who was highly drafted in the draft this year. You got Breece Hall. You got Michael Carter. Okay. For one, do you have confidence drafting any of these players? Let's start with Elijah Moore at the current ADP that they're being taken at.
Yeah, Elijah Moore, I'm getting on a lot of my teams. I found that because he's readily available in the 5th round. It sounds like, a couple drafts I just let him go in these best ball drafts just to see where he would go, and he's falling now to like the middle of the 6th, the end of the 6th round. So if you want to get him and you just want to secure him in the 5th round, that's fine. I just believe in him as a player. I don't have a lot of confidence in Zach Wilson based on what we saw last year. I mean, it's interesting because Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence both basically flamed out versus what their expectations were.
Right.
And we're giving Trevor Lawrence the mulligan, right? He's still getting drafted as QB 16-ish, and you feel good about him because the coaching staff is, basically they have a real credible coaching staff in there now versus what they had as their baseline. So with Zach Wilson, I'm unsure because, Elijah Moore's big games last year did come with Mike White and Joe Flacco. As you pointed out, the highlight was from him. But I'm still betting on talent there. As far as the other players, the other pass catchers, I'm not taking any Garrett Wilson. I'm going to let somebody else take him. If I'm wrong on that, that's fine. It's already difficult to see rookie receivers produce. I mean, we got spoiled with Chase. We got spoiled with Jalen Waddle, but I don't think Garrett Wilson's on that level. I don't think anybody does. And he's going to be one of 3 guys getting targets, 4 if you count Breece Hall, 5 if you count Michael Carter, who are all projected to get passes. So I mean, he'll have his games, and it's fine in the 9th or 11th round of a best ball, but good luck figuring out when to start him in season long. If you draft him in the 10th, 11th round, you're probably going to end up dropping him by week 3 for a hot free agent is my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett Wilson's so tough. I mean, one of my favorite players coming into the rookie drafts this season was Garrett Wilson. In fact, he pre-NFL draft, he was my number 1. That's where I settled on. Garrett Wilson was my 1. You, at the time, controversially, went with Chris Olave.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's looking pretty good for Olave right now. But
by the way, I want to interrupt you only because I didn't like Chris Olave thinking he was the best receiver in this class. No. I liked him as the number 1 receiver in this class, being that he was that he probably had the safest floor. So when you're in a rookie draft in these dynasty leagues and you have no idea what you're getting, unless there's like a clear Jamar Chase wide receiver 1, I just wanted to hit like a double. That's why. It's not like I thought he was going to be better than Drake London or Treylon Burks. I just knew that I thought that he would be the safest option.
Alan Seslowsky, rocking the money ball, just get on base. It makes sense, though. And look, we've talked about this. Somehow this is going to always turn into a Chris Olave conversation because we both love the guy. He reminds me, actually, the more I watch it, he reminds me of Brandon Cooks in the style of his play, where he doesn't necessarily always just utilize that game-breaking speed of his, but he has that in his arsenal. So he'll get a couple of those deep targets. I'm on record of saying I'm out on Michael Thomas. I don't care that he's, quote, healthier in camp. The fact that it's taken 2 years on the ankle is just, to me, I don't buy it. Now, if I'm wrong on Michael Thomas, that's fine. I'll accept that. But I'm drafting Chris Olave over Michael Thomas.
How about Jarvis Landry? Jarvis Landry, you interested in him at all in like the 12th, 13th round?
Not really. There's no upside to Jarvis Landry as far as I see it, right? Like, you know what? If you're in a deep league where you start 3 wide receivers and you have, say, 2 or 3 flex spots plus a super flex, and it's a very deep league, then yeah, Jarvis Landry is going to have a role in a team like that. But I mean, it's something that you and I have talked about forever. You want to draft your bench for upside. That's how you're going to win your league, right? Because you can find wide receivers on the waiver wire that are going to get you 8 to 12 points in any given week, right? You're hoping you're going to get 5 or 6 targets and maybe get 70 yards. Like that's a win for one of these random waiver wire players. But you know who is not going to be a random waiver wire player? Is Breece Hall. I got to talk to you about Breece Hall before we move on from the Jets here. So he continues to have a depressed ADP relative to other high pedigree running backs that have been drafted. And the worry has always been, well, for one, it's the Jets, right? We got to see it to believe it before we trust the Jets. It's the same conversation with Elijah Moore. But with Breece Hall, Michael Carter had an ankle thing today. I like Michael Carter. We both liked him last season. He doesn't hold a candle compared to Breece Hall and his talent. What is your opinion on, quote, drafting Breece Hall in the dead zone? And I'm going to put you on the clock here. You've got Ezekiel Elliott. You got Breece Hall. Your guy, Zeke. They're both on the board. It's right around the 3-4 turn. Who are you taking there?
Well, I could probably get them both by ADP, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm Zeke Elliott doesn't get out of the third round with me. So and Brees Hall routinely goes in the fourth round. I've never seen
Yep.
Brees Hall go in the third round in any of the drafts I've been in. It's very interesting. You make a really good point. Is that the RB1, the first running back drafted in any given year, doesn't matter where they go. They usually go in the first round of fantasy drafts, if not the second round. I've never seen the RB1 in any class go out of the off the 2-3 turn. Brees Hall is going like the end of the fourth round. I mean, I was on a lot of podcasts talking about how I think Brees Hall is one of the worst fourth round picks, but in two important drafts, I drafted Brees Hall in the fourth round. So I must not really think that. I think that it's easy to see the upside. Everyone liked Brees Hall's measurables. They liked his athleticism. They liked his draft pedigree. It's just that he's on the Jets, and there's that Jets bias. This is what's going to happen. Even Jonathan Taylor, who was in a similar situation where he was a high second-round pick on a good offense, the Jets aren't even considered a good offense, was basically useless for fantasy for the first 8 weeks of his rookie year. In fact, he was dropped in a lot of leagues, and then he was picked up, and whoever picked him up sort of benefited from that, from those last 5 weeks of fantasy. So if this happened to Jonathan Taylor, if it more or less happened to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think at least in the fourth round, it's priced in a little bit. You had to take Taylor and Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a fringe first round pick. I could see it with Brees Hall, especially if there's pass catching there, but just understand that it could be like a zero. He could have 12 carries for 60 yards in week one, and then he could have 17 carries for 43 yards in week two. And there could be no touchdown there. So, you get 8 points, 11 points. It's like, yeah, sure, you keep them, but you're not really getting what you paid for. I think it's a reasonable upside bet, but I'm not, if it fails completely in the first month of the season, I'm not going to be surprised.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, right? I have a really good friend of mine. He's an Indianapolis Colts fan. He's a diehard fan. He has been for years. And when the Colts drafted Jonathan Taylor, I was jumping up for joy. I'm like, Dave, one of the best O-lines in the league. JT's going to eat. And a month into the season, he's like, Shane, I hate you. Setting up these expectations and hopes. And here's the thing, okay? And we both follow Player Profiler. I know you've been on with Matt Kelly a few times. Their best comparable player for Brees Hall is Jonathan Taylor. Okay, when you look at his athleticism and college production, that's who it translates out to be. So for those of you who drafted Jonathan Taylor, it comes down to roster construction at that point, right? Because you're going to be passing on some of these high-end, quote, breakout wide receivers that you can get in the fourth round if you're going to be taking Brees Hall. But understand that if you can somehow build on the back end, say rounds 8, 9, 10, and get somebody like a Melvin Gordon or somebody just to kind of ride the tide for the first couple weeks, because MG3 is going to have a role in that offense, despite what all of us fantasy gamers hope. It sounds like it's going to be similar uses to last year. So
here's the problem though with what it's not what you're saying is totally logical. But when you're in the draft, you're not thinking about the 8th round when you're stuck in the 4th round. You're looking at the list of running backs. This is what happened to me. I had drafted Najee Harris at pick 5. I came back with Mike Evans, got Michael Pittman in round 3. Now I'm like, okay, I need a running back. I'm sitting there in like the 4.8, and I'm like, oh, man, it's like David Montgomery and Josh Jacobs and Antonio Gibson, and I'm like, or I could take Brees Hall. So that's, you're not thinking like, I'll just take a breakout wide receiver here. And then in the 8th round, I'll be lucky enough to get, it's the psychology of a draft. If you're disciplined, how you're just talking about, sure, great. But think about when that clock is ticking and there's in 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, Brees Hall, click.
The thing about that, Al, and we implore getting in the reps so that when you're on the clock and it's ticking down, you're not going to have that panic moment, because if you make that decision in 4 rounds, I'm going to have player X or player Y available to me because I've done 15 odd $3 best ball entries, right? So code DFS Army over at Underdog, go now. That's how you get better. And Al, I don't know if there's anybody that I know that does more drafts when you look at Underdog drafts, redraft drafts, and of course the coveted dynasty leagues. How many you win now, by the way?
Oh
What's
my God,
the
it's
tally at?
disgusting. I think I'm in 28 dynasty leagues. I've done well over 71 best ball. If you include just like even $3 best balls, $5 best balls. I didn't do too many of the 25ers, but I did a ton of the puppies. And yeah, I mean, and I'll be in like 5 or probably 8 redrafts.
And you still get the anxiety when you're in clock, eh?
This one was a this happened to be a high pressure situation.
Yeah.
I was doing other things. It was in Vegas. There might have been some scotch involved. So
was this when you were there with the Rotowire team?
Yeah. So
Nice.
and I was doing some video work, and they were like, "Hey, it's your turn to pick," and that kind of stuff.
I was in the Scott Fish Bowl this year, and thanks again, Scott Fish. And I took Brees Hall as my RB1, and I'll admit I was nervous when I chose that player, but we don't generally say draft based on need, but the value was there. I like Brees Hall. I'm bullish on Brees Hall this year.
Yeah, it's easy to see the upside. It's easy to see the upside.
I see the upside, and I understand you have to get to the first month, you have to get to the first 2 months, you have to get to the playoffs to make it to the fantasy football playoffs. I get it, okay, but Brees Hall has the talent to win you the league. I have adopted to eat it in recent years where I'm willing to swing for the fences and take players, smart players, like don't be stupid about it, right? But take players that are going to help me win the league. So if I can, I have enough confidence in my ability to draft these kind of Chase Edmonds, for example, is a nice guy who, he's getting the workload in Miami. You can get him around 7. He's relatively cheap. You can plug and play him. If you're not comfortable starting Brees Hall, you want to see what the Jets do with Brees Hall for the first couple of weeks. You can play a player like that. Because we want to win our leagues, Al. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, even like a Kareem Hunt, you could stash him in your lineup if things aren't going well. Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
There's a few ripcords, but okay, you brought up Antonio Gibson. This has been a highly, call it, subject player. I just released a video just yesterday over at the DFS Army Fantasy Football page, talking about how there's a lot of risk with Antonio Gibson, and frankly, it's the hopium, as Kevin likes to say it. The hopium. We hope that he's going to be a good player, but he's so cheap right now, and he's still the starting running back on an NFL team. Are you in at all on Antonio Gibson?
Well, all the risk is priced in, right? I mean, when he was going in the 3rd round, there was real risk there. And when the momentum started, where just to back up, like the JD McKissick in the beginning of the offseason was leaving. He was about to sign in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. And then we get the rug pulled out from behind underneath us, and JD McKissick signs back. So that, we know that he's going to be involved in the passing game. And then, of course, they signed Brian Robinson, who, again, I don't think Brian Robinson's anything like great, but it sounds like he's going to have a role, and it might be a goal line role. Yeah. Antonio Gibson, he was RB, 10 last year. I mean, you didn't get what you thought you were going to get because they didn't have those like mega weeks, but he did have a bunch of like fantasy point scoring where it was like 16, 18, 22. He just went on like a month-long run where it was all single digits, which really hurt you. So you didn't get what you paid for if you went and took him at like pick 10. So it's similar to the feeling I have on Zeke Elliott, right? Zeke Elliott, you didn't really get what you paid for. Actually, you kind of did, but it just wasn't these spike weeks. But he finished as RB7. That's Zeke. So now Antonio Gibson's in a situation where he's certainly going to be sharing the workload. I think the quarterback situation's better than it was last year with Carson Wentz. So if he's there in the 6th round, 7th round now, that's usually where I'm looking to take, the Jalen Hurts types, like a good quarterback, or if there's sometimes I'm looking TJ Hawkinson there, who again, I'm not in love with TJ Hawkinson, but it feels like the depth drops off after that. Like you're starting TJ Hawkinson. So if I'm not looking for my tight end, if I'm not looking for my top 7 quarterback there, then I would have no problem taking Gibson. I traded for Gibson in a couple of our dynasty leagues. Someone just tried to try to get Gibson for me, but they wanted him on the cheap. The upside's still there. And, everyone talks about like, hey, Brian Robinson is 1 injury away from having like a full. What happens if Brian Robinson gets injured? It works both ways, man. So I think that there is risk. So whoever doesn't like Antonio Gibson is right. There is reason to not like him, but all of that risk is now baked in. You don't have to spend a 3rd or 4th round pick. It's a 6th round pick.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And it's one of those situations where if you don't have a running back and he's staring you in the face there, you can take a shot on him, right? But if you have 2 or 3 running backs already, probably pass. Maybe go with a Drake London who's being drafted right, or get Jalen Hurts if he's still available. Like there's other options, and so there's an opportunity cost, even if you need a running back, to getting Antonio Gibson, because if you're plugging and playing him and he's getting 12 points a week and you want to kill yourself, well, that's just the price of doing business with Antonio Gibson around 7. You have to take that into consideration. Okay, let's move on to something that, frankly, I'm trying to parse out myself with all the news, and it's so hard to just filter out all the camp BS versus the camp truth.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time figuring out this Kansas City wide receiver corps. We just saw Sky Moore, what was it, today? He left practice because of a hip injury. That, man, for a twitchy wide receiver like Sky Moore, that worries the hell out of me, frankly. But, of course, you got Juju Smith-Schuster, who, frankly, I think he's being underrated right now. And you've got Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who didn't do squat with one of the best quarterbacks in the league with Aaron Rodgers. So, one, if you had one wide receiver to draft, ADP agnostic, but you had one guy you think is going to score the most fantasy points at the end of the season, who do you think is going to be?
It's the one guy you didn't name. It's Travis Kelce, right? ADP agnostic. Yeah. Travis Kelce is set up to get, to see the most targets of his career. I mean, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, it's like you're an NBA fan. It's like Stockton and Malone, right? Mm-hmm. Stockton and Malone. It's like they knew where each other was going to be. He would roll off the pick. I mean, it was beautiful. It was like art to watch. And that's what Mahomes and Kelce are like. They know exactly where each other is going to be. They know he doesn't even have to point. He just kind of head nods. And I know Travis Kelce's total yardage was down last year. It was like 1,100 and change. He had a few games that were like 39 yards. And that's so fine. He's 33 years old. He doesn't have that same, prime upside as he had one time, but if he gets 180 targets, I mean, it's like, and I know it's hard to project anyone for that. It's not a responsible projection. Probably 140 though is the floor. And if he looks for him in the red zone, I could see a 100 catch season for Travis Kelce. Even if it's low yardage, he's still going to have a 9 touchdown floor in my judgment. So that's the obvious one. But okay, so there's going to be someone else in the passing game. You hit on it right. I like Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster already has a top 10 finish. I mean, that rookie year of his was unbelievable. And we saw that he was able to do that as the Robin to a Batman, right? As he was the co-alpha or the secondary receiver when Antonio Brown was there. This kind of lines up similarly with Travis Kelce. We saw that Juju Smith-Schuster didn't thrive when he was the primary target. You could blame Ben Roethlisberger's arm. You could say that Juju Smith-Schuster wasn't ready for top corner coverage. But he's back in a similar role to where he was with Antonio Brown. I can easily see looking up in October 1st and be like, wow, Juju Smith-Schuster is wide receiver 9, and I got him in the 6th round. Who's this year's Cooper Kupp, right? That's the biggest cliche that you hear. Why can't it be Juju Smith-Schuster, the guy who finishes, with a top 10 ADP, and you got him in the 4th or 5th round? I think you can even get him in the 6th round. So
he's pretty cheap.
Yeah. I like that one. And again, there's always that thing, follow the money. He didn't even get paid that much, but I think that it's set up nice for him. He's a really good bet in the 6th round, in my judgment.
Yeah, if I'm drafting any of these guys, it's going to be MVS for sure. I honestly think, sorry, not MVS, Juju. I think MVS is fool's gold. I really think he's fool's gold. He reminds me of like the DeMarcus Robinsons, the Byron Pringles. Like, yes, they're going to have secondary roles, but at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes likes to home in on specific players. That's just how he's always played. Now, maybe it's because he has Travis Kelce and he had Tyreek Hill, even if he was less accurate than Tyreek
Every
Hill's
team needs a guy like MVS. They need a lid lifter, someone that can at least threaten the defense deep. I mean, there was a point in Deshaun Jackson's career. I mean, there was a point for a while that he was like a top 15, top 10, top 5 receiver. But late Deshaun Jackson was a better NFL player than he was a fantasy player because he made the defenses respect the deep ball. Marquez Valdez-Scantling can do that, and the Chiefs had problems with the safeties pushing back last year, the too high shell. MVS is somewhat of a solution to that issue.
Here's the thing though, Al. Sky Moore ran a 4.41 40. What was MVS? I think 4.39, something like that. So it's not like he's significantly faster. Then obviously, MVS is significantly taller than Sky Moore. Sky Moore's not a big dude. He is only 5'10", but if they need the speed game, Sky Moore can do that. Now, obviously, again, this hips worry me, dude. Like, this is a worrying
second injury too for Sky Moore.
I know he had the hamstring, I think, in OTAs, and then now
it's not a good start. It's not a good start.
Well, and for any of those runners out there, I think you run. You're like a track runner, or you do cross country. I thought you did, Al. Maybe just the cycling.
You got the wrong guy, man. I have nothing to do with track.
So I used to in my younger days, I used to run a lot of long distance running, and one of the things you find is that hamstrings. Like, why my hamstrings hurt so much? And why my hips always so damn sore? It's all connected. It makes sense that he has a hamstring injury. It's connected to the damn hips and hip flexors. Like, it's all connected. So obviously it wasn't completely healed. He pushed it too hard and he hurt himself. And that's the problem with these soft tissue injuries, is the fact that they could be reoccurring throughout the season. And so I'm putting a little bit of pause on Sky until some of these fantasy doctors out there tell me he's good to go or he's not good to go. But
I'm not drafting him. No, I'm not drafting. Yeah, in the ninth round where he was going, I'm sure he'll drop a little bit now. But in the ninth round, it was a hard pass for me. In dynasty leagues, I did take him with like pick 10, pick 8, early on. But there was a lot of good hype on him. But it's like I could still see it long term, and it won't surprise me if he does have a good mid season, late season. But in your drafts, I mean, whoever drafts him is going to spit him back out on the early waiver wire anyway.
Oh yeah. If you're in a dynasty draft now, and for the most part it's redraft season through and through, it's August 2nd, like we said. Who are you taking first? Are you going to take George Pickens ahead of Sky Moore or Jahan Dotson? Like, the Pickens hype is real, man.
Yeah, I'm still taking Dotson first over George Pickens, but yeah, I would take, if I was doing a rookie draft today, and I think I'm in one right now that's moving very slowly, but I would take Pickens. What do we know about Pittsburgh? That they're pretty good at drafting wide receivers in the second round. Yeah. Mike Wallace, I mean, he was one of those guys. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's I'm trying to think of Juju was a second round wide receiver.
Was a second round.
Deontay Johnson, yeah. I mean, it goes on. I mean, Antonio Brown was like even later. He was like a fifth, sixth rounder. Yeah. It would be interesting to do that exercise. What was Martavis Bryant? Was he a late? Bottom line is they're good at this late round wide receiver thing. And George Pickens, he was, everyone thought of him as a first round pick talent wise that dropped because of maturity issues. I know nothing about that, but that was what the narrative was around him. And now he's doing Chase Claypool, by the way, was another second round wide receiver. But I'm saying he was another second round wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so George Pickens certainly deserves to be ahead of Sky Moore if you're doing a draft right now. But it's just, I respect that first round draft pedigree so much with Jahan Dotson that I probably in good conscience couldn't do it, but I'm sure that will happen. I'm sure, because they weren't going too far apart before George Pickens had some good offseason blurbs written about him.
Yeah, I think I'm probably taking Sky, then Jahan Dotson, and then George Pickens.
So you're sticking to your guns. Okay, I respect that, because you're sticking to your guns.
No, I take Jahan Dotson over George Pickens.
You know who's a player that's moving up in these rookie drafts that you are actually very early on? I had never forgot this, was Wan'Dale Robinson. Yeah, you were early on him in one of our.
I came on your show. We talked about Sky and we talked about Wan'Dale, I believe, didn't we?
Yep. Yeah. Sky Moore at that time was still like, he was kind of on that was a good call, but Wan'Dale Robinson was the ultimate call, because you were talking about that. The narrative was that he was going to be like a third, maybe a fourth, maybe even like a fifth rounder. He ends up going in the second round. You said this is a player that could produce. He had the high production at Kentucky. So yeah. And now it looks like in Giants camp, he's doing really well. He's just playing all over the field. So yeah, that's a good clip to for your resume right there, because Wan'Dale is a good call. And I always remembered how you talked about him, and I got him in a lot of my drafts because of you.
Yeah. I mean, it was Wan'Dale and Khalil Shakir who, man, I'm still in on Shakir. I don't care. I'm in on Shakir. I think he's going to have a productive career. Maybe not for fantasy, maybe like a wide receiver 3 upside, but I like Shakir. Let's talk about the Giants for a sec, because they're a very intriguing team for me this season, right? Last year, I mean, everybody's talking about how the Baltimore Ravens were decimated by injuries last season. Well, so were the Giants, man. Yeah. Their entire starting wide receiver core was injured for the most part. Saquon Barkley was injured. Like, this year, now that we actually have some clarity on Saquon, he's going firmly in round 2, which I agree with. I like that. I think that's a good spot for him.
In the NFFC, man, he's going in round 1 right now. Let's see here. Let me pull it. So I pulled draft the last. Let's see, since the 25th of July.
Yep.
I could be wrong. And let's see, all positions. And so this is 43 drafts. So it's a good sample.
Yep.
Saquon is pick 15. So he's right on the turn now. He's right on the turn.
That's moving up. That's still moving up.
And his min pick, let's see, his min pick was 8.
Wow. Well, didn't you want to draft with List, and didn't List take him on 1.3?
3 overall, which is, again, I wouldn't do that, but hey, listen, he wasn't coming back to you in the pick 21 or whatever it is. So if you want him, that's the spot to take him. I think 8's a good spot for him. 10. So, I mean, if you're in the first round, and you don't like the end of the first round, sure, take him, right? I mean, I have other guys that I like to push up, and we can get into that. You wanted to talk about the Giants, but go ahead. So Saquon.
Yeah. Well, so Saquon, to me, he's kind of, we think we know what he is. We hope he is at least a fraction of. If he's 80% of what he was his first couple of years in the league, he's gonna smash in his ADP. That's
why can't he be 100% of what he was? I mean, it's not like he's got all the skills. Yeah. You know, he's had a couple weird injuries. He's a couple of years removed from them now. The offensive line has been upgraded. The coaching has been upgraded. Right?
If he's 100% of his previous self, he should be in the conversation with JT and Christian McCaffrey.
Well, that's what Chris List thinks.
Yeah, it perplexes me that people have this blinder. Christian McCaffrey has been just as injured as Saquon Barkley, but yet we're still going to draft him at 2.
Yeah, well, here's the reason. Again, I'm not taking Christian McCaffrey in the top 5. So I'm on the side of that argument. So here's what, if I was arguing the other side of it, is that in the handful of games that McCaffrey did play over the last couple of years, he did give you those massive games, like 25 points each time he played. I don't know the exact numbers, but when Barkley played, a couple of those times, even when he was injured, they weren't good games. So that's why. But look, Barkley's not far behind. He's like 10 ADP spots behind him. If you're in an overall contest where there's a huge grand prize, I could totally see taking Christian McCaffrey in the top 1 or 2. But if you're just in a league where 6 teams make the playoffs, I don't like taking that kind of risk in the first round, but I do respect it if you do. So,
No, I like that. Where are you at on Daniel Jones in Superflex leagues? Because I understand in one QB leagues, it's probably not in conversation, but where are you comfortable drafting Daniel Jones? Like, are you happy as your QB2?
Yeah, I mean, if Daniel Jones is going at like QB 20 or something like that, 22, something like that. So if you want to deploy a strategy of taking an early quarterback and then filling your roster with, all the position players, that's a pretty high upside QB2, especially if you have like a Pat Mahomes type or just someone who's just rock solid. Even like Russell Wilson, you can take a few chances, because even later on, if you want to get a third quarterback, Marcus Mariota or Mitch Trubisky, someone who doesn't have the job security for the full season. Yeah, I like the upside of Daniel Jones. Think about the normal progression of first-round quarterbacks. Year 1, they get their shot. Doesn't matter if they take their lumps. Year 2, okay, they get their shot again, but now the coaches have an eye on them. Year 3, if it hasn't really kicked in yet and he hasn't realized his full potential, what they do is they bring in a veteran, right? And who's that veteran? They brought in Tyrod Taylor, who was with Coach Brian Daboll at Buffalo. Brian Daboll doesn't want to go 5 and have 5 wins his first year. He wants to. I'm certain that he wants to make the playoffs. Of course he does, but they don't want to have a 5-win season. They want to have a 9-10 win season. And Tyrod Taylor is just the caretaker. If it goes south, if the Giants are 1-5, 1-6, that's the problem with Daniel Jones. I like him and I like his fantasy upside, but he has true benching risk.
Well, apparently there's some murmurs that they're interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. So I don't know. To me, if you're trading for Jimmy Garoppolo and you have a guy like Daniel Jones, who last year had a lot of injuries, his entire supporting cast was injured, like, you're not any further ahead by going in and getting Jimmy Garoppolo. Because do they really think they have they probably think they
do. But here, Daniel Jones would probably be part of that trade, though. So he wouldn't be on the roster, I'm assuming. If they trade for Garoppolo, my guess is Daniel Jones would be the backup to Trey Lance.
But what's his salary? It's probably around $18 million.
Right, but there would be other pieces involved with that. But Daniel Jones is on a rookie contract. I haven't looked at his contract ahead of time, but I'm guessing it's like $6 or $8 million in year 3 for a top 6 pick. I can look it up.
That's true. I just thought Baker and Sam Darnold were right around 18 mil.
But those guys were on the last year of their rookie deals. Dan, here, I got it right here. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we do have the internet.
Yeah. Let's see.
This is what happens when we go off script.
Yeah, no, that's okay though. This is interesting. I think people would be interested in something like this. Oh my God, I just lost it. I had it for a second. But yeah, no, but that they would figure out, and then you know how these teams do. They figure out a way for like who's going to eat the salary,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So
Well, the thing about Jimmy Garoppolo is they can cut him today and he's out. There's no guarantees for his $25 million. So, I mean, he's
oh,
going to take a pay cut, but have an opportunity to compete because it's very clear. San Fran, they've told him he's not even at camp, right? He's not there. He's not participating with the team. They're moving on from him. So it makes
oh
sense.
Jesus, you want to hear this one? His salary for this year is less than $1 million. Daniel Jones.
Really? Holy
It's
crap.
900,000. His cap hit, if he was cut, obviously wouldn't
Yeah.
be cut, would be 8 million. But yeah, no, he's a $900,000. Yeah, he got a $4 million bonus. Yeah, I mean, basically,
Huh.
it's $1 million. It's nothing. It's a
Yeah.
rookie contract.
Okay. But we're on the same page here. Like if you use your QB2 and you wait, like you sent me one of your drafts that you did, an auction draft actually, which
You liked it?
congratulations, Al.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
it was a
right.
great team, man. Well, for one, it was auction, which I appreciate. But,
Right. No, I had a good
you
experience. I had a good experience, which sets me up for a better attitude with your
There you
auction.
There you go. We need to have a show just on how great auction leagues are and some auction
Let's not
strategy.
get crazy.
But yeah, that's right. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Dallas, you're on record. We're not going to repeat it. You love Ezekiel Elliott as ADP. Well established.
Yeah.
Okay. Who are you taking as a wide receiver 2? Or are you just like, are you comfortable with Jalen Tolbert in Dallas as a wide receiver 2?
I took him. I got him for $1 in our auction. You know,
Yep.
I mean, am I comfortable with it? No, it wouldn't. You know, it feel now that James Washington is going to be out for 2 months, they'll probably bring in someone. I mean, is this the Will Fuller spot? Like, well, we going to see Will Fuller? I mean, he's sitting
Why
out
hasn't he
there.
signed yet, man. It's so wild.
It's very wild. You know, this is total speculation and total rumor, but Green Bay was courting him heavy and he didn't want to go there because of weather. Speculation. I don't know this information. This is something I'd heard. So that's why he ended up signing in Miami. But it was odd that once he hurt his hand, he never came back. We don't know what his commitment. I mean, I think it's safe to assume that his or it's safe to at least explore and have the conversation about is his commitment to football there. We don't know, right? I mean, his talent is there. So who else is out there right now, right? I mean, there's
so there's one name that I was kind of thinking about, and he's I don't think he retired, but Antonio Brown. Now, obviously, what happened?
He's not going to play.
Is he done? You think he's done?
Well, there was in the beginning of the year, there was surgery that he needed to have in order to play. And he said, I'm not going to have the surgery unless I'm signed first. And I think team said, have the surgery and then we'll see if we'll sign you. So it was chicken or the egg. And I don't blame him. Who wants to have surgery that they don't need just to go play in the NFL? There was no guarantee he was going to be signed. So yeah, my best guess is that we don't see Antonio Brown this year. So yeah, I mean, is this lineup for Dalton Schultz again? Right. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Dalton Schultz was tight end 3 last year. Not that he's this overly athletic superstar, but he was somebody that Dak Prescott trusts. What really this means is probably Tony Pollard is going to have a bigger role. He's in early camp. He was lining up as a wide receiver. That's one of my favorite things. This wide receiver, a running back X is taking snaps as a wide receiver. It might actually happen though. There's also a couple other guys. I mean, no name guys that just, names on the back of jerseys that we don't know about yet that could emerge. I mean, Noah Brown is still there. TJ Vasher was I think he was hurt all of last year. He's an older, red shirt rookie that he's, got some size. So there's going to be guys that are on the team now we don't know. I mean, I'm not saying any one of these guys are going to turn into Victor Cruz. No one knew who Victor Cruz was at this time, the year he broke out. But there are going to be players on that roster that we don't know about that do, have 35 receptions on the year, maybe, 28 receptions. So
do you know, is Simi Fehoko still on the team?
I think he is.
Is he gone? Because I kind of liked him as a prospect. Like he was, he was an interesting guy. He's
athletic.
He's super athletic. Yeah. I mean, he's 6'4", 222 pounds. He's a big bodied player, but yeah, it looks like he's still in the Dallas Cowboys. Just drafted last year in the 5th round. So, players like that will have an opportunity to emerge. But
how about this one? How about the Marvin Jones? Could he be traded to?
Well, it's interesting. So, I was listening to the Football Diehards, and they, of course, have Mike Dempsey, who's very plugged into the
Jags.
And he was talking about that. Yeah, I mean, it's very realistic that Marvin Jones could be the odd man out in this offense.
Darius Slayton might be. I'm just thinking of like wide receiver
Yeah.
4s or wide receiver 5s that may not make their team that we still think are like decent players. And, the Cowboys could be waiting for one of those guys to get cut, like a Slayton, Marvin Jones, guys that they
I'm
probably wish
surprised.
that.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't go after like a Julio or something like that. Like, look, Julio's not what he was, but he's a depth piece on Tampa Bay at this point. Like, if Godwin is ahead of schedule, like he appears to be, and actually starts say week 3, week 4, I mean, Julio's not going to get starting reps. So, I mean, to me that shocks me a little bit. Like, why wouldn't he sign with a team where he knows he can be a starter and make a difference?
I don't think Julio wants to be a full-time player. I think Julio wants to play in warm weather. Dallas certainly qualifies. It's indoors. He wants to play. But Tom Brady is one of those guys that you want to go play for to win a championship, right? He's Steph Curry, right? Tom Brady is Steph Curry. He's like, everyone wants to go play with him. And if Julio he'll play, if there's like a rain game, they probably won't use Julio. If they're down by a couple touchdowns, if they're up by 10-0 in the first quarter, you probably won't see Julio until the fourth quarter. It's going to be very difficult for fantasy. There's going to be a few weeks where Julio has 20 points, but Julio wants to be on a Super Bowl contending team. He probably doesn't view Dallas like that. Friend of my podcast, Mark Stopa, had told me in April that it was all but certain he had some inside information, I guess you call it, that Julio was locked and loaded. He was going to Tampa.
Really? I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. You get him in those seam routes. He basically plays like the pseudo Gronk role a little bit, and he's just going to be an end zone or red zone target, which, sorry, Kyle Rudolph fans, it ain't going to happen. It's just
not that he was a red zone target in Atlanta, but yeah.
Stop. That's just mean. Come on, Al. That's just mean. Okay, so I want to be cognizant of your time, but I want to talk to you about what are some of your training camp battles or just storylines that you're following that you think are going to be impactful for fantasy football this season.
Yeah, one of the Buffalo Bill. It's very the Buffalo Bill running backs is what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
It's very odd that everyone thinks Buffalo is a top 3 offense, but both of the running backs go in round 8 or 9. That's almost unheard of, right? I mean, I know Josh Allen is capable of getting 9 touchdowns. I think last year it might have been around 6. I'd have to check that. But what if Josh Allen has 3 rushing touchdowns because he's becoming more of a passer now? That means that one of the running backs is going to return 3rd round value. The way I figure it is, let's say, for example, that Devin Singletary suffered an unfortunate injury. We don't wish injury on anyone, and he was out for the season. Where would James Cook be getting drafted tomorrow? He'd be going on the 2-3 turn, right? Is that fair to say?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right. So why that specific situation is something I'm interested in. In a few drafts, I took them both and see how it shakes out. So, but as far as training camp battles, I want to see what happens in Houston. I know that's like, it's kind of like nobody thinks of them as a good offense, but one of those guys, Marlon Mack, a couple of years ago before the Achilles injury, was a 1,000-yard rusher. He had 8 touchdowns, right? I mean, he's available readily in the 13th and 15th round. I know.
Full circle. The reason people weren't taking JT was because of Marlon Mack.
That's it. Yeah, they respected Marlon Mack. So now he's got himself a projected starting role, and I know that everyone likes Dameon Pierce, but he is a 4th round rookie. So that would be another situation I'm following. You want to see how that Houston shakes out. And the other situation that I'm really paying attention to, and not that anyone's disputing that Austin Eckler is the locked-in primary running back there, but what's Isaiah Spiller's role going to be? Because there is a role available for a running back to have a low yardage, like a 700-yard, 650-yard season, but like 10 or 11 touchdowns. Austin Eckler was complaining in the offseason that he was taking too many hits. He needed a running back to absorb some of that short yardage stuff. Now, Austin Eckler had the big touchdown season last year, but prior to that, his season high in rushing touchdowns was 3. 3 rushing touchdowns. If Isaiah Spiller can show ball security and be reliable, there is a very easy case to see that he earns a role where he has 10 touchdowns, maybe a low yardage. So that's another situation I'm monitoring in the preseason. What's Isaiah Spiller's role?
It's really funny. To say I was out on Isaiah Spiller might have been an understatement. Like I wanted to have nothing to do with Isaiah Spiller, but once you have just a little bit of time to just digest the information, he is kind of the perfect running back to land in a Chargers uniform alongside Austin Eckler. In college at Texas A&M, that his role was in a committee back. Like, one of the selling points when they were recruiting Spiller to go to Texas A&M was the fact that we are not going to wear you out. You're going to be in a committee so that when you get to the NFL, you're going to be fresh. Now, obviously, he was at the combine, but he didn't do much to combine. He didn't test or any of those things. He went to his pro day. The numbers weren't great. And the truth is, one of the most predictive, indicators of success in the NFL is a running back's athleticism. That's just a fact. Okay. So people were really worried about him. But the fact that he, in college, still had close to 200 rush attempts every single year, over 1,000 rushing yards almost every single year, and he had close to a 10% target share. He can do everything. He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. He can get touchdowns. So he's going to have sneaky value. And what's interesting is I was chatting with one of our members in the Discord, and he took Isaiah Spiller. I think it was like the 2.3 or 2.4, which at my first instinct was, wow, that's early for Spiller, man. But he's going to have a real role. And I like Dameon Pierce, but a player like Isaiah Spiller could this year, as much as I hate to say it, could have more fantasy relevance just because he's on a good team. And maybe he gets into the box 10 times and gets that AJ Dillon type workload, because that's his talent level. That's what he's going to do. So I think that's really interesting. Yeah, where are you taking Isaiah Spiller? Like, are you comfortable taking him?
Oh yeah, I've been single digits. I'm going 9th round, 8th round, where if I'm ahead. Yeah, I think he goes in the 10th, 11th. I mean, think about this: if there's a preseason game and he has a couple touchdowns in a preseason game, I mean, you're going to be paying a 7th round pick. So if you have an early draft, I mean, last night I tried to sneak him on my roster for $1, and I was in the end game, and somebody had 2, and they got him. I was a little pissed off at that, but yeah, now in some rookie drafts that I'm in, I traded up to get him. I got enough of him where I'm comfortable. For all the reasons you just described, I'm in on him. And, there's obviously no guarantee with a 4th round running back. They could draft over him again next year. But for this season, I like his chances.
There you go, baby. Okay. For the people, before I get you out of here, Al, other than Isaiah Spiller, name 1 or 2 guys that you love drafting. Let's call it after round 9. So after the top 100 players are off the board, who's a guy that you love getting shares of on your redraft teams or best ball teams?
Yeah, I mean, so far I looked at my my portfolio, and my most rostered player is still Paris Campbell, man. And the case is easy to see. I mean, he was high pedigree draft player. He is all the camp reports and the buzz have been that him and Matt Ryan are connecting. He operates in the part of the field where Matt Ryan likes to throw. He's just had some bad injury luck. I mean, he goes in the 15th round. I've been jumping up ADP to take him in the 13th. So if you're in a draft with me, you're probably not going to get him unless you want to overpay. Last night in the auction draft, I tried to sneak him through for a couple bucks. He went a little higher. He went for like 6 or 7. I'm not willing to do that since I have so many shares of Paris Campbell. But there's not even a tight end there that is going to command targets. Bo Alley Cox. I mean, so the target, they did draft a wide receiver in the 2nd round, Alec Pierce, but it's a rookie wide receiver. A lot of, there was a sense that he was overdrafted. I still like him, but yes, Michael Pittman is going to be the alpha, but it's not. And also when we did see Paris Campbell, he was pretty dynamic. He was pretty good. So if I was to put an optimistic projection on him, you could see a situation where he has 68 to 74 catches, about 800 yards, and gets in the end zone about 5 or 6 times, almost like a Brandon Cooks light type of season.
Yeah. Talent has never been an issue with Paris. It's always been the health. It's always been the friggin' health. And Alec Pierce, look, super athletic. But we've seen over the years, we've been burned when we get infatuated with these super athletic wide receivers, that athleticism doesn't translate to fantasy success or NFL success. It's not the prerequisite. And then you look at, Alec Pierce, he was the alpha playing with Desmond Ridder in Cincinnati. What was his line in college? Granted, I know it was a low passing offense, but he had 85 targets for 52 receptions. He had 884 yards and he had 8 touchdowns. I guess the touchdowns, we like that, but he wasn't even very productive. So what are we talking about here? And here's the thing. He didn't really impress at the Senior Bowl. Like, yes, he was fine, but Jalen Tolbert and Christian Watson totally blew him out of the water. So I'm especially for this year, I'm out on Alec Pierce. If it burns me, so be it. But
Yeah.
man, Shea Paris,
Yeah.
I'm in love. I
And
love it.
here's a piece of fantasy advice for
Yeah.
the listeners of the podcast is that anyone that you're drafting in round 12 through 16 in your typical draft, these are basically glorified waiver wire pickups anyway. So if you pick someone in round 12, you're not wedded. You shouldn't be wedded to them when the hot waiver wire guy comes up. So there's no ADP. Don't pay attention to ADP in rounds 12 through 16. If there's someone that goes in round 15, you want to play chicken a little bit, that's fine. But I always just go up and get the players I want. I'm always in leagues that still have kickers and defense. I'll take those guys in the 13th round. I'll want the elite guy because they're going to start for me every single week. And then just to close it out, just to give you a running back as well, someone that I think you should be interested in late, and that's Darrell Henderson on the Rams. You know, Cam Akers, as you know, is coming off a devastating injury. Didn't look great when he came back, but a report came out. We're recording this podcast on August 2nd, and Sarah Bishop, who is the ESPN reporter, observed that both of those guys are splitting reps, Akers and Darrell Henderson. McVay called them both co-lead running backs. You're paying up for Cam Akers at this point. You're getting him in the late third round, early fourth round if you're lucky. But Darrell Henderson, you could get a piece of the Rams backfield, which again, we like the team, we love the offense in the 11th round, 12th round. It's just as good as a bet, and neither one of these guys has been able to stay healthy. So it's just someone that today my attention has gone to. I'm going to make sure I secure a few extra Darrell Henderson, who wasn't on my radar prior to today.
As usual, sharp as hell, Mr. Alan Seslowsky. So how do the good people find you on all the different platforms?
Yeah, my name at Alan Seslowsky, ALANSESLOWSKY. It's in the show notes below on all the big platforms: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. That's where I put out a lot of my content on TikTok and Twitter. And of course, follow Rotowire on YouTube, at Rotowire, putting up tons of videos every day. And of course, Shane, I love what you're doing over here, what you're doing with Kevin, the geek. I follow along. As I've told you, it's appointment listing for me. I think you guys are doing a great job. I think you guys are doing a better job with the site, with the content than when I was doing it, for sure. You guys have really taken it to the next level. So I certainly appreciate what you guys are doing here.
Well, I mean, you're the OG. We're just trying to pay homage, right? So it's not blowing smoke. Like, legitimately, you guys got to go check out his stuff. He's always starting shit on Twitter. That's what you love. But it's really that video content over at TikTok and YouTube where, as far as I'm concerned, you're an expert at this point, and
you're the man.
You're really making a big difference, and you're building a niche for this fantasy community because, frankly, we don't do it very well, and you are a trailblazer. So I really appreciate it, Al. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for all I've learned from you.
Anytime.
When does the magazine come out? That's the last question. When's the magazine coming out?
It's out. It's out. It's being shipped. So it's funny you said. So you're talking about the Rotowire magazine, which Shane, you participated in a couple of the drafts. It should be, it should be shipping now. So you should have your copy in a day. If you want to get a Rotowire magazine, it's rotowire.com/magazine. And you say, what the hell do I need a magazine for? So you remember when you used to go to like a ball game, a basketball game, a baseball game, a football game, and you'd buy a program, and you'd have that program to commemorate, or you'd buy like a t-shirt or a hat, something to commemorate the season. I like buying a fantasy magazine. It's only $6 and they ship it to you free to commemorate the season. So I still have 10 years going back of fantasy magazines. So I remember when Jimmy Graham was a first round pick. It's kind of nostalgia for me. I put them in plastic bags and stuff like that. So if you want to get a copy of the Rotowire magazine, which has all the great information in it, a lot of evergreen articles and stuff from you, Shane, you participated in that. You did a write-up. So
why do you think I'm promoting it? Oh, come on.
Yeah, yours should be on the way. I will check in on that for you. I haven't even gotten mine yet. Rotowire was a little late getting it out this year. They had some printing issues, but those are all fixed and everything's on the way.
Love it. And last thing, I promise, you guys still have the promotion week free. It's rotowire.com/try.
Sure. So if you want to check out, and we always think that the best fantasy players try out multiple draft kits. Like you shouldn't just get one. And if you want to just get one, that's fine. The DFS Army one's amazing. I subscribe to it. So, full disclosure, I always check in and see what you guys are doing. But if you want to try the Rotowire premium content, you can do it for free right now for 2 days. We're letting people peek behind the paywall for 2 days. Just go to rotowire.com/try and just put in your email. There's no credit card. There's nothing to cancel, anything like that. You got to peek behind the paywall. Rotowire.com/try.
Love it, Al. So thanks so much for coming on the program. All the details are down below, so make sure you go check it out. For Al, I'm Shane. We have, of course, the DFS Army Bold Calls Fantasy Football Show. Thanks for tuning in.